Week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, it's been a great season for him this year. He was number 1 quarterback off the board, and rightfully so. And this season between Allen and Lamar Jackson, for the most part, I think those are the top 2 quarterbacks in fantasy football. So this week, a good matchup versus the Miami Dolphins. Their defense can't stop anyone. We saw last week Arizona come back in the fourth quarter and win that ball game. And since Amari Cooper's been there, this offense has been even more lethal, and he's been opening up the passing game. Even though last week he didn't do much, but it's getting good one-on-one coverage for other receivers to go out there and win matchups. Number 2, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So this Eagle team playing great football over the last few weeks. And when you get A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back in the lineup, everyone's numbers are going to go up. And that's exactly been the case for Jalen Hurts. So last week, 4 total touchdowns, 3 of them on the ground. And this week, a great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, where obviously they're one of the worst teams in the league, and they can't stop anyone. So I think Jalen Hurts goes out there, has a nice performance. Number 3, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. What a season it's been for Lamar, and possibly winning another MVP this year for him. But this week, the only thing is it's a tough matchup, no doubt about it, versus the Denver Broncos. One of the best, if not the best defense in all pro football coming to Baltimore this week. But Lamar now got a new weapon in Deontay Johnson. We'll see if he plays in this game. But with his running ability and players like Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews have been making plays all season long, and to add another good wide receiver like Johnson is definitely a boost. And he's matchup proof, and he's had a great season. Number 4, Jayden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. Jayden Daniels taking the league by storm this season in his rookie year. Last week, we thought he wasn't going to play with a rib injury. He guarded it out and hits a game-winning Hail Mary on a deflection to win the ball game. And this week, a great matchup at the New York Giants, a defense that's getting torched all season long. We saw Russell Wilson just go out there and have a big game versus Giant defense. So once again, Daniels is locked in as a top 5 option. Number 5, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow, it's been a good season for him, but not a good season for the Cincinnati Bengal team. But this week, I think he gets right. Once again, great matchup. Vegas Raiders coming to town. We'll see if T. Higgins plays in this ball game for the Cincinnati Bengals. But even if you don't, you got guys like Jamar Chase, obviously one of the best receivers in the league. You got Mike Gesicki, who stepped up last week in the absence of T. Higgins. He was getting those targets at the tight end position. And you got a pretty decent backfield in Chase Brown and Zach Moore. So once again, Burrow, I think he goes out there and has a nice ball game. Number 6, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So I know he's day-to-day with the groin injury, but this is a big division matchup. I know it's early in the season, but if this Lion team, let's say, wins this ball game, now they're 2 up in the division, so Jordan Love's got a big arm. I know the interceptions have definitely been up this season, but he's spreading that football out, and he's putting up points on the board. So this week, in a potential shootout in Lambeau Field, Jordan Love, if he plays, he goes out there, has his normal type of ball game. Number 7, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Finally, last week, a big ball game for Patrick Mahomes. We had over 20 fantasy points, and it's definitely been a struggle, but when your wide receiving room is decimated, Rashee Rice out for the year, Hollywood Brown has been out for the whole season, Juju Smith-Schuster hurt, they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, you got Worthy there, pretty much the only 2 guys that are worth mentioning in that wide receiver room. And you got Kelsey, who's back to being the number 1 option. So this week, I know he might be a little bit high on the list, but it's a great matchup versus Tampa Bay, where their secondary is decimated and they just can't stop anyone. They're giving up tons of passing yards and touchdowns this season. Number 8, Kirk Cousins of the Atlanta Falcons. So this week, a great matchup versus a decimated defense as well of the Dallas Cowboys coming to town. The Cowboys can't stop anyone. We saw Brock Purdy last week go out there, have a big ball game with Brandon Ayuk, who's out for the season, and also Deebo Samuel, who wasn't 100%, and Purdy still went out and put up some big numbers in that ball game. So Atlanta, they're better at home than they are on the road. Kirk Cousins coming off a big game at Tampa Bay, and we'll see if Micah Parsons returns for the Cowboys. But even if he does, I believe Cousins could go out there and have a big performance. Once again, number 9, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Last week, he led the comeback victory was Kyler Murray at the Miami Dolphins, and it was a big passing game for him. Marvin Harrison over 100 yards receiving, Trey McBride over 100 yards receiving, and Kyler Murray, when he's in the zone, he could put up fantasy points in bunches, and we've seen it over the last couple weeks. Going back to week 7 as well, where he had a 50-yard run for a touchdown in that ball game. So this week, definitely a tougher matchup. Chicago Bears coming home to Arizona. But Kyler Murray, throughout his career, he's been a better home quarterback than he's been on the road. So this week, even with the tough matchup, I think he goes out there. It's in a good performance. Number 10, Sam Darnold of the Minnesota Vikings. So Sunday Night Football, good matchup. Indianapolis Colts coming to town. Minnesota's always been a better team at home than they've been on the road. And those indoor games is more an advantage for the offenses as well. So Sam Darnold's been playing great football. And when you got a number one wide receiver and the best receiver, in my opinion, in the league, like Justin Jefferson, it makes everything easier. So this week with a good matchup with the Colts coming in, I like Darnold as a top 10 option. Number 11, CJ Stroud of the Houston Texans. So Stroud definitely down on the list this week here. But when you're out, your two top receivers, Nico Collins out one more week. Stephon Diggs out for the season, tore the ACL in last week's ball game. And now he's down Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, John Mechie, and Dalton Schultz at the tight end position. So a lot of unknowns. And the veteran Woods mixed in there at the receiver position. And this New York Jet defense, they are pretty good. But I still believe Stroud could go out there, make things happen. He's a quarterback that never focused on one option in the offense, and he spreads that football out. And also, Joe Mixon's been a good receiver out of the backfield this season. So I think Stroud will be all right in this ball game, but definitely bump down the rankings a little bit with those injuries. Number 12, Jared Goff, the Detroit Lions. So this week, tougher of a matchup for Goff and this Lion team. But Goff's been going out there, and he's putting up points on the board early and often. And when you got an offense with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery out of the backfield, and a speedy slot guy like Khalif Raymond, you're going to put points up. And this week at Green Bay, I believe this could be a shootout. And let's not forget, Green Bay did give up 27 points to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who've been a poor offense all season long. So I think Jared Goff, he's been matchup-proof the last few weeks. I don't know if he's barely thrown an incompletion. He's laser-focused. And this week in a big division matchup at the Packers, I still believe he goes out there and it's a good game. 13, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So Stafford quickly moving up the rankings now with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back in the lineup for the Los Angeles Rams. And this week a good matchup at the Seattle Seahawks, a secondary that hasn't stopped anyone all season long. We saw the Bills go in there and destroy them in last week's ball game. And we've been seeing Seattle giving up a lot of points this season, and we saw it on a Monday night early in the year where the Detroit Lions put up 42 points. So this week, I think Stafford and this offense goes into Seattle, a team they're familiar with. And like I said, when you got two stud receivers back in the lineup, it's going to boost up your numbers, no doubt about it. Team Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I know he's down. Chris Godwin out for the season. Mike Evans out a few more weeks with his injury. But Baker Mayfield's a gunslinger, and he's still going to go out there, put yards and points on the board. I know he's going to throw some interceptions, but that's just the way he plays the game. So this week, definitely a tough matchup at Arrowhead. But I believe this Chief team, they're going to stop the run pretty easily, and it's going to be in Baker's hand to try to win this ball game somehow for this Buccaneer team with those major injuries like I mentioned. So like I said, Baker's still going to put up some numbers, I believe. Obviously, his ranking went down with a tough matchup with Arrowhead on Monday night. But I believe he's still going to throw that football 35, 40 times in this one. 15, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, it's been a struggle for him over the last few weeks. I know he had some touchdowns at the end of the game last week, but that was garbage time for the most part, where San Francisco wasn't prevent. So Dak Prescott's turning the football over at an alarming rate. This Cowboy offense, to be honest, really don't have much going on. Their run game's been non-existent for the most part this season. The offensive line isn't as good as it was in previous years. And CeeDee Lamb finally had that big game. But besides that, Ferguson's been up and down. Jalen Tolbert really hasn't been a consistent number 2 option with Brandon Cooks out. And this week, I know it's a good matchup at Atlanta where their defense isn't all that great as well. But Dak Prescott is tough to trust right now, and that's why he's down in the ranking. 16, Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. So Caleb Williams, last week it was a down week for him. In a matchup, people thought he was going to have a good game, but I didn't think Caleb was going to have a good game at the Commanders, and he didn't. So Caleb Williams this week, a little bit of a better matchup at the Arizona Cardinals. But still, it's a road game, and any road game for a rookie quarterback. Even Jaden Daniels is going to be tough at times. So Caleb Williams, he's not on the same page as his wide receivers often this season. DJ Moore, last 2 weeks, he really hasn't done much. Keenan Allen, besides one big game this season, and injuries have done him in. And Rome Odunze, he was a high draft pick this year in the NFL draft, and he had one big pop game in Week 3 at Indianapolis. So with all those factors against Caleb Williams even though it's a good matchup on paper in an indoor game at Arizona. He's not really a quarterback I can rank that high. 17 Tua of the Miami Dolphins. Tua last week returned from injury for this Miami Dolphin team, and he looked decent at points, but also some indecisive decisions. Fumbled the football as well was Tua, and this week it's a tougher matchup at division rival, the Buffalo Bills. And Tua, we know throughout his career, his home-road splits have totally been different in terms of putting up fantasy points. I know they got great weapons, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane out of the backfield, but Tua, like I said, he's still not 100% in my opinion. And last week, towards the end of the game, he tired out after he got off to a hot start. So it's tough to trust him in a tough matchup versus a division rival that obviously is very familiar with him. Number 18, Jameis Winston, the Cleveland Browns. So Jameis last week came in. He's the starting quarterback now. When he was moving that football all around the field, Cedric Tillman had a big game. Elijah Moore, good game. Jerry Jeudy put up some numbers. David Njoku, Nick Chubb back in the fold. So I believe this offense is in a better place with Jameis Winston than it was with Deshaun Watson. So this week, not a great matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers, where their defense has been solid for the most part all season. But Winston, he's that classic gunslinger where he's just going to throw that football down the field, 50-50 shots, and hope for the best. And we saw it many years ago with Tampa Bay, where he had a 30-touchdown, 30-interception season. So that's the type of quarterback Winston is. He knows he's getting another opportunity. And last week, he looked great, pulling off the upset victory versus the Baltimore Ravens, going over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this week, a tougher matchup versus a better defense, I believe, overall, the Chargers are than the Ravens. And we'll see if Winston could go out there and have another good game. 19, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. So this Jet team, on paper, this offense looks great. But obviously, you got to go out there and execute and play the game. So with Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, you thought this offense would put up more points. But Aaron Rodgers, obviously, Father Time is catching up to him, and that's undefeated. Is that Father Time coming off the torn Achilles last season? 40 years old now. The mobility is totally gone, and the interception rate's gone up a whole lot as well this season for Aaron Rodgers, where he's going out there and he's throwing a lot of interceptions, what we haven't seen throughout his NFL career, and also an older offensive line protecting him as well. So this week, it's not a horrible matchup versus Houston, and we know these Thursday night football games are usually high scoring majority of the time. But like I said, his ceiling isn't that high for Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to get you rushing yards, and the turnovers are definitely a problem. In the 20th and final quarterback I'm ranking is Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. So Bo Nix, the last few weeks, he's definitely putting up numbers. I know last week he was inflated a little bit with a great matchup versus the Carolina Panthers, that one of the worst teams and defenses in the league. So he had over 30 fantasy points. But Bo Nix, he's a mobile quarterback as well. But this week at the Baltimore Ravens, it's going to be a tough one, because let's say Baltimore gets off to a good start, even though this Bronco defense is one of the best units in the league, and then they know Bo Nix in this offense has to pass. So Bo Nix and this Bronco teams have been playing with a lead over the last few weeks, but now we'll see if they're trailing in this ball game, how his numbers are going to be, and that's why I have him last on this list. So that's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for week 9 of the fantasy football season.